Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video. This video is going to be incredibly extensive, so it's going to be super informative. Make sure to watch until the end. It may get a little bit too much at times, but if you're in the crypto space, if you're into Bitcoin right now, which is the perfect time to be in the crypto space overall, I would definitely watch until the end. Leave a like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell. I will break this video down into TA. Right? Then I also wrote an article last night, which I spent until 5 a.m. doing so, and then I woke up at 7 a.m. to go to school. So I am running on 2 hours of sleep. I do apologize if I'm not the best on my best performance, but I will be going through this article. We go through so much, and it's incredibly informative to be looking at each and every one of these points as we evaluate the timeline that Bitcoin took to reach $69,000 once again. And of course, I talk about my future predictions giving data. I'll get into that after the TA, and that will be on the timestamp in the description below, so you can skip to that if you're not interested in TA, but more so on fundamental analysis. We have breaking news. We'll go through the ETF inflows or outflows, depending on what we saw, and we can look at the total leaderboard in terms of volume by ETFs, because IBIT is currently trading as the most volume ETF on the US market, which is incredible because there's 3,400 ETFs approximately in the United States, and IBIT being the most traded one is incredibly impressive. Just a couple of days back, Bitcoin was the second most searched thing in the United States, meaning retail is coming back, but we'll go over so much more, so stay tuned, like I said, until the end of this video. But let's jump into the short-term TA. And we'll approach things one by one. So this is the 4-hourly time frame for Bitcoin. Ever since the previous live stream that I made, I have made some adjustments. So if you're in the Telegram community, I updated you guys last night saying when Bitcoin was trading back down at 62.3K, we had a nice rebound from $59,000. I actually took profits, so I took 10% realized profits while Bitcoin was trading within the range of my take profit zone, and that was between $66.5 to $69,000. I decided to do that because we were forming a topping out candle right over there following an MRI top on the 4-hourly. So I took 10% profits from my personal long positions, and then I bought back on spot, and this was super lucky. I'm so happy that I did this. When Bitcoin dipped below $60,000, I was able to accumulate this with the same amount of capital I took out from my personal longs. I bought back Bitcoin in spot, and that was at $59,700. I shared the article last night too, so if you want to stay ahead of the content I publish, and if I do updates on my trades and I can't make a video at that particular moment in time, you can join the Telegram community. It's absolutely for free. All you got to do is go to the link in the description below and join here. And also, guys, we are running a awesome giveaway with Bitflex. If you want to be able to participate in winning an Apple Watch giveaway, which is valid until the end of this month, make sure to check out the link in the description below for Bitflex, and you can get up to additional $68,888 worth in rewards, which includes an Apple Vision Pro. But going back into the 4-hourly, what do I expect to happen next? Well, Bitcoin had a huge dead cat bounce, and it took us back to now $66,900. We are at an interesting phase in the market. I want to zoom out into the macro because this is the chart that actually matters compared to everything else that we will look at today. Bitcoin has surpassed its all-time high yesterday. Bitcoin created a new all-time high, so massive congrats for the all-time high. We all deserve a pat on the back because, well, we had probably one of the worst crypto winters ever, and the worse the winter, the hotter the summer. And now we're gonna have a very hot summer, a very awesome bull market that I predict is going to be probably the most prolonged bull market. And additionally, I do think we'll be going into a super cycle as Bitcoin becomes a more mature asset with more daily volume coming in. So Bitcoin has surpassed its previous all-time high that it created. If we look into the previous cycles for Bitcoin, whenever Bitcoin does surpass its previous all-time high, we tend to break very fast. Right, we break it very fast, and Bitcoin goes on a huge run. So the returns are diminishing Firstly, we saw 7,180% returns in 2013. Then in 2017-18, this dropped to 1,000% returns. And finally, between 2020 to 2021, we saw 340% gains. So it is quite diminishing, but I do think that this time round, these diminishing returns could flip, and we could either print more than the previous cycle, or we don't go down in such a low number. So the key gist here is that Bitcoin never returns to the previous all-time high it creates in the other cycles. You can notice here, whenever Bitcoin breaks its previous high, we never return back down to it. This happened in every single cycle. So now that Bitcoin is breaking $69,000, it is possible that we do not see a $69,000 Bitcoin ever again. Keep in mind, this is the monthly time frame, and there is still 25 days and 8 hours for this candle to close. Usually we do face resistance when Bitcoin hits the previous high. We could get rejected on this month's candle like we did back in 2017. So we could see a small rejection. The top of this candle was trading at $1,300 and the bottom of it was trading at $895. That is a big difference. That's like a 30-35% difference. So until this month closes, I personally want to wait for the verification. But if we close above the previous high, then Bitcoin could be heading much higher and never return below $69,000 ever again. So in that perspective, I'm very much bullish on Bitcoin. But if we jump into the shorter time frame, like the 4-hourly, honestly, it is looking, I think the market's trying to decide what it wants to do. We had a bearish divergence, and this bearish divergence caused this reversal from the $69,100 top. This reversal was around 13.96%. And as I said, I'm super happy to have been able to buy Bitcoin once again below 60K, because you know what, we don't know for, if we will be able to do that ever again. Sure, maybe on the monthly time frame we will see the reversal, but equally it's possible that we don't, and that's why I do believe in the power of DCA. We entered into our Bitcoin long position once we broke out from $43,300. That was our first entry. Our second entry was at $51,000, and then the third entry was at 62.5. And I've only realized 10% profits on my personal holdings. The trade we have going on in Bitflex, I've not closed it, and I'm not planning on doing so. So in terms of derivatives trading, that's what I'm doing. But in terms of spot positions, which is buying Bitcoin off of the market and taking it onto my Bitcoin wallet and not touching it forever, I am just keeping and holding it, maybe between $90,000 to $95,000. I will take some profits, but it will all depend on the relative market cycle and how the monetary policy is doing across the world. I'll get into that very shortly. However, the trend is still very much bullish. I'm not going to be closing my positions or taking profit on my positions, at least until the 3 and 7 period moving averages cross into each other on the weekly time frame, because historically speaking, whenever they do, it does indicate a top for Bitcoin. This time around, the moving averages are still very much further apart, and this does signal me that Bitcoin could surpass the all-time high, and we could be above the all-time high going into the $80,000 region or $70,000 region, maybe even next week. So this is why I'm very much excited, and I'm not going to be taking profits until this 3-period moving average crosses into the purple moving average, and that is the 7 SMA. Looking at Ethereum very shortly, Ethereum surpassed $3,900. I mentioned that the second level of resistance, or the second level of take profit I have for Ethereum, sits at 3,950. We almost hit it, but still Ethereum has not been able to touch that line of resistance. I think a correction for Ethereum is very much due, because we've just been printing green candles back to back to back. I do think that the $3,950 level could give us that resistance that we were looking for at Ethereum. In terms of the Bitcoin dominance, we've dropped by approximately 1% ever since the live stream, and this has caused Dogecoin and multiple other crypto tokens to rally other than Bitcoin. I think Ethereum makes up a lot of that, because I think Ethereum started to outperform Bitcoin once again, and this is the strongest signal for the start of the altcoin season. leading me to believe that in approximately 1 to 2 months, we're probably going to be seeing one of the biggest and final altcoin seasons in the crypto market. So start preparing. I made a video with my top altcoins. I'll make a refreshed video with my top altcoins. Do your research into projects that generate revenue, treat them as basically normal companies. And if you believe in the vision, if you believe in their business model, then look into potentially investing. Of course, nothing in this video is financial advice, but this is just what I learned from my previous experiences in the Bitcoin cycles. What was super interesting was that Bitcoin, the CME futures for Bitcoin, hit a high of $70,445. You notice that this is approximately $1,000 higher than what we saw on the Bitcoin spot price in terms of an all-time high. And what this means is that, well, traders and institutional traders that are trading the CME, which is the futures contract for Bitcoin, they are expecting higher prices. Therefore, they're willing to pay a premium to be buying up the CME. That is equally very much bullish. We saw something similar happen on Upbit, which is the biggest South Korean exchange. If you don't know, a lot of the derivatives volume comes from South Korea. And over there, we were approximately $2,000 above the Bitcoin spot rate over on Binance. Again, this is showing to me that a lot of whales are expecting higher prices. Coinbase Premium Index at a massive high. And we know that there's a lot of American retail investors too. So overall, looking pretty bullish. At $69,000, whenever Bitcoin retests 69K, it's going to make that level of resistance a bit more weaker. So it should give us that opportunity of breaking above it. But as soon as we cross 69.1, I think Bitcoin has the potential to hit 70K. And if that happens, well, I'll be alerting you guys on the Telegram community, over on Twitter. And if the video is necessary, then we will make the video. Two, MicroStrategy is, I think it has surpassed the all-time high. I mentioned that MicroStrategy and Coinbase I'm very much bullish on. So if you were able to accumulate those two stocks and you do trade stocks, then massive congrats. There is one concern. The S&P 500 could potentially be seeing a reversal here. The Fed chair, he was testifying today and he mentioned that do not expect lower interest rates until we see a confirmation that inflation drops down to the 2% target. And to me, this is probably a very bearish signal for the S&P 500, and it may cause the S&P to reverse. But the situation that we're seeing in the traditional stocks is that there's so much printed money in the United States, and I think that this printed money is being funneled into the stock market so that it appears there's an illusion that the economy is booming. But in reality, it's not. People are at all-time high debt. There is huge inflation across the board, and the S&P 500 really shouldn't be trading at these levels because people just do not have money to be investing into the stock market right now. So I think this is just an illusion. As you know, we're coming up towards the elections. As soon as we have the elections and the Fed starts pivoting, I think the market will also reverse at the same time. But that covers my TA. These are charts that we covered in previous videos already. Looking at Dogecoin and Shiba Inu alongside other meme coins, they are continuing their rally, which is absolutely fantastic. So now let's move away from the TA and let's go into my views on, first of all, the market data, because the funding rates, this is super bullish. So the funding rates basically reset after we saw the 13-14% correction on the market from the all-time high. They are going up once again. For example, on BitMEX, it is looking like it's pretty high still, but on Binance and on Bybit, it's dropped from the 0.1% levels, and that could cause a further pump on the markets because, well, long traders, they are not forced to sell their positions because, well, they can keep up with the market. But the more that Bitcoin hovers at this resistance and doesn't break above it, and the more that the funding rates are still going up, it means that long positions will be paying short positions at a rate where it doesn't become profitable anymore. So that is something that we need to be watching out for. Yesterday, there was approximately $1.1 billion worth of liquidations on the market following that huge pump and dump that we saw. But we can see here in the last 24 hours, this has dropped. Well, yeah, so all it's 1.18 billion, and that is a huge amount to be keeping in mind of. But now let's jump into the report, because I spent an easy 10 to 12 hours preparing it. As I said, I was basically writing it until 5 a.m. in the morning, and then I slept for 2 hours, and then I woke up again at 7 a.m. and that's the only 2 hours of sleep I've gotten basically in the past 2 days. But on March 5th, 1903 GMT plus 4 time, which is Dubai time, Bitcoin reached a new all-time high. And this was the first time that Bitcoin has done it in the last 2.5 years. And this is a record because Bitcoin has never ever reached its all-time high before the actual halving event. So this has been first in history. We do not know that this cycle is different thanks to the ETFs and the buying pressure that we're seeing. So this cycle is different to previous ones. And this, as I mentioned, leads me to believe that perhaps the 2024 to 2025 Bitcoin cycle leads us into a super cycle where Bitcoin probably goes to astronomical levels. But let's go back and let's have a look at what the data suggests. So this is a quick summary of what has happened over the past couple of months to the past couple of years. We can see here that we had the Luna collapse, and then Bitcoin fell down to $17,000, $18,000. After the FTX bankruptcy, Bitcoin bottomed out at $15,500. This was in November 2022. Then the market started to reverse back towards the upside. And of course, in March of 2023, I believe, we started seeing the bank runs emerge in the markets. We had SVB collapsing, First Republic Bank collapsing, and people realized that, hold on, maybe we should be switching into Bitcoin because that's what Bitcoin has been created after the 2008 financial crisis to avert something as such from happening. So because there were bank runs, people switched into Bitcoin, and this pushed the price of Bitcoin from the low 20s to the $31,000 region. For the next couple of weeks, the markets did cool off, and until we saw the BlackRock spot ETF announcement, there wasn't much going on. After seeing it again from the low 20s, we pumped back up to 31K, making this 31K level of resistance pretty weak at this point, and then the market reversed once more. We saw the fake approval, and after we saw the fake approval, the market just kept going up because there was positive news. We had the release of the news that, okay, more ETF issuers are actually going to be entering into the markets. The market got educated about what the ETFs can actually do to Bitcoin and how their buying pressure is going to impact us positively. And then eventually the ETFs launched over on January 11th, where the market stopped out at $49,000 because of high funding rates. And then you know the drill right after. Currently, Bitcoin has been hitting an all-time high on this week's candle. So I hope that has been a good summary of what's been happening so far. We have over $600 million now of daily buying pressure because this is a little bit outdated. This is from February 27th, I believe. So now we have even more buying pressure on a daily average coming into Bitcoin, where we only have like 46 or now it's $58 million of new Bitcoin mined. Traditionally, though, in the lead up to Bitcoin's halving events, the asset does undergo a correction of between 30 to 35% before entering its parabolic growth phase. But this time it's different because Bitcoin is already in that parabolic growth phase. Previously, when the CME launched in 2017, Bitcoin topped out at $20,000, and that was a rally by 85%. And we also saw the Coinbase IPO in the previous cycle. The market became euphoric, solidly speculated on prices increasing, and then eventually the prices topped out. But what differentiates this time from the previous cycles is that the event of the spot ETFs actually bring in direct revenue, or not direct revenue, but direct flows into Bitcoin, where Bitcoin is actually purchased off of the market and stored in the ETF issuers, where most likely it's not going to be sold off. It is possible in the upcoming months that if the ETFs become less popular, then we see major outflows over the bigger ETFs such as IBIT. But I really want to have one of the ETF experts over on my channel to discuss this in more detail. So stay tuned. I'm chatting with a couple. Let's see what happens in the next couple of weeks if we can get some better answers from actual experts in the field. But I do believe that overall, I think the ETFs will cause a less downside risk for Bitcoin because it will increase its maturity. Once Bitcoin gets accumulated by pension funds, RIAs, wirehouses, and more people have exposure to Bitcoin, I think it will be much harder for Bitcoin to have significant drops, such as 30 to 35%. in a matter of like 2 weeks or even 1 week. And this will increase the maturity of Bitcoin, making it the perfect asset in terms of hedging against inflation. But this chart looks at the total performance 365 days after the halving. We see the halving event and then Bitcoin tends to go parabolic. I think now at this point in the cycle, we've probably seen this first leg up already. Maybe after the halving, we see the second leg up. That could take us to 95K. And at that point, I'm expecting some sort of a reversal. But it's important to know that 60% of American cryptocurrency investors belong to the Gen Z to millennial generations. If we put this in contrast to, who actually has the most capital in the world, that actually belongs to the Gen X and baby boomers. And these guys don't use cryptocurrency exchanges like we do. They mostly use BlackRock and Fidelity. So now with their own products, their own spot ETFs, they're more likely to be purchasing Bitcoin from them, whereas they wouldn't be using normal cryptocurrency exchanges because it is different. It is a different concept. And usually old people, if they're used to something, they don't like change. They're not like us. We're much more adaptable to change, like we saw with COVID and like we're seeing with technological revolution. So now catering to them, they will be hopefully able to acquire Bitcoin much, much more easily and hold it as a part of their portfolios as they see Bitcoin performing very well. And that should be dropping on their leaderboards on their exchange accounts, hopefully. But the total exchange traded products across the board, we've seen now more than 1 million Bitcoin being accumulated. That's approximately 5.5% of the total Bitcoin supply. So the total control that ETPs, so exchange traded products, which ETFs are a part of, their total control over the Bitcoin supply is increasing. And this is just in a matter of, well, a lot of other ETFs existed before, but the US spot ETFs have accumulated 100,000 Bitcoin in just 1 month, for example. And if you just multiply that by 12, that's going to give you 1.2 million Bitcoin. It's not possible for them to accumulate that much, or it is, in fact, if the liquidity meets it. But we do need to keep in mind that total exchange reserves are at all-time lows. We're seeing people, 70% of people, or 70% of Bitcoin circulating supply that has not moved in over a year. We also know that OTC desks have all-time low capital in them. Meaning that overall, if the ETFs continue accumulating at the pace that they are today, then the supply is just not going to be able to meet the demand there is. And that should be causing, theoretically, the price of Bitcoin to moon. But again, as long as demand exists, Bitcoin should hopefully be doing very, very well. And keep in mind, right, in the next 100 years, only 1.35 million more Bitcoins are going to be mined. And after that, that's it. We're capped at 21 million. We don't have any more supply. And this mathematically makes Bitcoin the hardest asset globally, especially after the halving now. It's going to, in the stock to flow chart, which you can check out. I'll put the link for this article, by the way, in the description below. There's a Twitter version too. I'll leave that in the description. Bitcoin is going to become the hardest asset in the world, meaning that less Bitcoin is going to be entering the circulating supply compared to gold entering the overall gold supply. And this is mathematically going to make it the better inflation hedge, right? This is concerning because worldwide debt has surpassed $220 trillion. And this fiscal imbalance has led to extensive money printing, fueling huge inflation across the world. And it's impacting more so developing countries, but not even developing countries anymore. Just in general, countries are being affected. And in these countries, I talk more about this in the Buy 0.1 Bitcoin and Become Rich video. So I'll put a card to that at the top right-hand side. But people are forced to buy either gold, silver, or now Bitcoin to protect themselves against inflation. There are problems that comes with gold and silver. Bitcoin solves them. In summary, you can watch that video to find out more. But this is an important metric. So the ratio of physical to paper gold, because there's a lot of ETFs of gold, there's a lot of financial products, and these ETFs cause more leverage to the actual supply than there is. So the ratio of physical to paper gold, which is not real, it's tied up in financial instruments, this sits at 11 trillion to 250 trillion. And that's not sustainable. Thanks to Bitwise, which now created this revolutionary system where they posted their public Bitcoin holding address. So we can verify on-chain with most ETFs too over on Arkham Intelligence that these guys hold the Bitcoin that they're saying they hold. Meaning that this has not happened previously in TradeFi. And it's a revolutionary thing because we actually can prove the authenticity of holdings. Whereas with gold, for example, most of the gold for the GLD ETF is stored in London. It's like $93 billion worth of gold that we don't even know if it exists really. So there's proof, there is backing, and this will revolutionize the monetary system as we know it. Larry Fink is very much bullish on this too, with blockchain moving over into, going into the traditional finance, improving settlement times, improving the velocity of transactions, and therefore improving GDP of countries. I'm super bullish on this. I'll talk more about that in tomorrow's video because that is a topic on itself. But, I really do think that soon millions of people around the world, including government treasuries and pension funds, will accumulate Bitcoin in their treasuries. As a matter of fact, we just got breaking news that the Arizona State Senate is considering adding the Bitcoin spot ETFs to their state's retirement portfolio, which is valued at $45 billion. So we're already seeing now retirement funds going into Bitcoin just one day after me posting this article. But in terms of year-to-date, if we compare Bitcoin's returns to that of gold's returns, Bitcoin's delivered 44.92% compared to gold's 15.42%. Keep in mind, there is a very strong correlation right now between gold and Bitcoin. Both of these assets hit an all-time high on the same day. So Bitcoin has been classified as a commodity by the SEC, and I think now it's being treated more as an inflationary hedge compared to a tech stock, which is very good. It took over silver's market cap yesterday, making it the 9th most largest asset in the world. I just want to point this out. It was at 66666, and that is, of course, a very funny number. There's some whale that is putting Bitcoin at that particular level every single day. It's super funny, it's hilarious. But where was I? So we talked about the debt. This was a cool little picture posted or graphic posted by iShares themselves, looking at Bitcoin's performance over the years since 2013 compared to some of the most famous equities, commodities, etc. that people invest in. And you can clearly see that Bitcoin does provide the superior returns. We've only gone down 3 times since 2013 to 2023, but the returns provided do outpace the losses incurred over those years. What's funny is that this has only been posted after iShares launched their own ETF product. This has been the case for so many years, but nobody's really talked about it until the ETFs launched their own products, and now they're marketing it like crazy. So crossing the $69,000 threshold meant that all Bitcoin addresses were in profits and over 100% in profits, of course. So I do think that is probably why we had some sell-off. We had a lot of long liquidations, and on top of this, probably some people decided to take profits when they hit break even. There was some on-chain data of very old Bitcoin holders selling their Bitcoin to the market once we went over the all-time high. So people probably did decide to take some profits, which is normal. But these are the weekends, they've been shaken out, and I think we do have the momentum to cross above it once again. And what's interesting is Coinbase faced a second outage, ladies and gentlemen. So Coinbase went down for the second time. This is 2 times within 3 days due to a 10x surge in traffic, which the CEO, Brian Armstrong, stated. And this is showing us that retail investors are logging back into their accounts, they're checking their portfolios, maybe even buying some more Bitcoin. I know, like my barber, for example, yesterday, he asked, okay, what should I be doing with my Bitcoin? Should I sell it? Should I buy it? So retail interest is clearly back, and it's going to become exponential, where more than just 4.5% of the world is going to be exposed to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. I talked about this in the previous video, so I won't get into it, but the total UTXO age bands represents that the 1 day to 1 week cohort of investors, they've started going up, meaning retail, again, based off of on-chain data, is most likely coming back. In terms of Google Trends, 2 days ago, Bitcoin price was the 2nd most searched thing in the United States. Super, super bullish. The last time this happened, I think, was in the previous bull market top, but don't quote me on that. And finally, finishing off, a lot of skeptics doubt the feasibility of actually Bitcoin reaching a $1 million mark, but they overlook the fact that if the United States dollar begins to devalue with continuing national debt increase with an uncapped ceiling until 2025, the more that money is printed into the markets, the more the value of the United States dollar and other currencies across the world will drop. And if we measure Bitcoin just against the USD, if one currency is falling and the other stays strong, well, Bitcoin should just simultaneously increase in price without much having to go into it. And this is why a $1 million Bitcoin is feasible. And at that point, Bitcoin wouldn't be obeying laws of physics of technical analysis because, well, the thing is, right, if a currency devalues, like we just saw yesterday with the Egyptian pound, which fell by 37%, that is an external factor that cannot be predicted. But yeah, in that case, Bitcoin could go to $1 million. So we have more. Okay, so I already talked about my thesis. Until the Fed pivots or the elections take place, I don't think the stock market is going to be dropping. So I already went into all of this earlier on in today's video, but open interest and funding rates are high. That's okay, volume is also high. Unless the price of Bitcoin is actually trading at the levels that we're trading and continues going higher, it's fine if open interest and funding rates continue going up. We just need Bitcoin to be providing more returns to the market than funding rates take from long position holders. And if that's sustained, then Bitcoin should continue its rally without too much of a concern. But remember, long-term holders have started to sell on the macro and short-term holders start to accumulate. When these two either bottom or top out, that will indicate the top of the bull market. We're currently not at that level yet, so I really do think that Bitcoin has much more momentum in it to continue increasing and keep going higher. I know this video is probably going to be like half an hour, or it's already been half an hour long, but I thank you for keeping up with me. Now let's quickly run through the breaking news. There isn't much, but again, it's important to go over. So let's scroll down to the very bottom. We talked about the correlation between the stock markets and Bitcoin. It is pretty similar. Now it's even more similar as Bitcoin hit back its all-time high. You can see the clear correlation between the two, well, the index and of course Bitcoin as an asset. We're seeing the total volume, I believe this looks at volume. So the volume going into Bitcoin, or the number of trades going into the Bitcoin ETFs, have surpassed the number of trades going into the SPY and the QQQ. And these are the two biggest ETFs on the market. Hugely bullish. No one would have predicted it. Incredible. And we know, we talked about this on February the 27th, Bitcoin was crossing over the 61.8 on the Fibonacci retracement while we were trading at $48,000. And typically whenever Bitcoin does surpass that level, we hit new all-time highs, and that's exactly what we've been doing so far. So massive congrats. Then this is the Fed balance sheet, which is super crazy. The total amount of Bitcoin leaving exchanges hit $2.3 billion just 2 days back, and that is concerning. That's not concerning, that's amazing, but it's concerning for the supply dynamic because, well, supply is just not going to be able to meet demand. Altcoins are bleeding in terms of in relativeness to Bitcoin. Altcoin season, I said, I think it's going to be happening in 1 to 2 months, so don't be scared there. And when people do realize that the monetary system and banking systems are corrupt, there is going to be a revolution. Bitcoin is going to lead that revolution because Bitcoin is more than just an asset. It represents an entire ideology of liberalism. And when people do realize this, like Henry Ford said a couple dozen years back, I think Bitcoin will see the amount of demand it deserves and deserved since its inception. But it's huge, right? This is ETFs. It goes into what the ETFs do. So if you didn't know already, the ETFs, they do end up buying the Bitcoin on the day. So the settlement is just posted the next day after. So when we predicted that, okay, the ETF inflows are probably going to be hitting an all-time high yesterday, I said that because the day before, the Bitcoin price surged to exponential levels. As a matter of fact, IBIT accumulated, I think, $788 million. Yeah, right over there. So that was an all-time high. But we saw some outflows from GBTC, which didn't allow us to cross over the $673 million worth of inflows that we hit just a few weeks back. But we were very close indeed. And I think we will smash above it as soon as Bitcoin goes above the all-time high. So Tether printed, Tether hit $100 billion, and that's just showing that there's demand for the USDT, and people are buying USDT to potentially then enter into Bitcoin. So it shows the demand for stable coins. I believe that is good. BlackRock plans on buying spot Bitcoin ETFs through its $36 billion Strategic Income Opportunities Fund, and I think that more and more ETFs, because ETFs represent a huge category of investments, right? So they have, let's say, tech stocks, they have commodities. Depending on the strategy of the ETF, they accumulate different actual stocks or commodities. And if more and more ETFs, more tech-based ETFs, more future-based ETFs put Bitcoin in them, I think that will also drive volume and keep IBIT trading as the #1 out of 3,400 ETFs in the United States. This is crazy because this shows, this is what President Nayib Bukele posted. And it's funny because all mainstream media, well, they've just been posting articles about him for making a bad choice by buying Bitcoin when it was there. And they just posted bad things about him. And as soon as Bitcoin started to jump in price, we've heard nothing. Now that Bitcoin has hit an all-time high, no mainstream media outlets have been talking about it. Not many have been talking about Bitcoin crossing the all-time high, by the way. We'll get into that in just a second, but you can see that he's still waiting for them to congratulate him on his mastermind move. But it's sad that mainstream media isn't covering it as much as it did in the previous bull market top. We also saw this punk sell for $16 million the other day. Crazy. It looks like traction is coming back. But whenever Bitcoin breaks above its past all-time high, like I mentioned, we go a lot higher, a lot quicker. The SEC delayed its decision on the BlackRock and Fidelity Ethereum ETFs. As I said, I don't think this is going to be happening. I think mostly it's going to take place between 1.5 to 2 years. But until that point, Ethereum at least needs to secure a DCM listing to provide like some backing to a potential Ethereum spot ETF approval. Like I said, out of dozens of mainstream media outlets, only WSJ, so the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, and Investing.com mentioned Bitcoin hitting new all-time highs, but every other mainstream media outlet that you can think of basically didn't do so, and that to me it's pretty interesting that that's the case. This is great. So this is Jan van Eck. He's the owner of Van Eck, which is I think the 5th largest or 11th largest ETF provider in the United States. Right now, he basically approved the fact that making a comparison between gold and Bitcoin is the right thing to do, and I think this is so bullish, and people underestimate how bullish him saying this really is overall in the macro grand scheme of things. Grayscale is lobbying the SEC to approve options on the spot Bitcoin ETFs. Like, keep in mind, I mentioned that there's more trades taking place on the Bitcoin ETFs compared to the QQQ and SPY, but this is without the Bitcoin ETFs having options available on them. As soon as we do see these options become available on Bitcoin, then we're going to be seeing huge institutional investors or big whales hedging themselves using options, and that will bring in massive amounts of volume, more so than what we're seeing right now. Yesterday, Binance suspended withdrawals due to some error, but it's fine. I just wanted to quickly address this very quickly. And yesterday, the ETFs did hit a record volume of $10 billion traded within one day. Most people don't realize this, but the halving is only 40 days away. Super close. Jim Cramer on Jan 25th said that Bitcoin, well, now that it's hitting $40,000, it's probably going to reverse from this level. Ever since then, Bitcoin has basically gone up by like 60%. And that's just funny. Fun fact, Bitcoin has made history. We talked about this, and BlackRock accumulating Bitcoin. We went through that as well. MicroStrategy is raising $700 million on a 6-year term at a 0.625% interest rate. So the company raised $100 million more than initially announced and is going to be buying more Bitcoin by offering equity to investors. They're just buying Bitcoin. Like, that's their goal. They're going to be buying Bitcoin and continue buying Bitcoin for a very long amount of time and focus on building Bitcoin. That's why I'm super bullish on MicroStrategy. And as I said already, Michael Saylor is probably one of my biggest idols overall. The Fear and Greed Index hit extreme greed. Now it sits at 90, I believe. Maybe it's a little bit lower. This to me is not concerning yet. The overall all-time high is 95. Extreme greed, we're 5 points away from it. But until other indicators point out to me that, okay, look, Bitcoin's probably topping out here, it's not going to be concerning. Look, we fell down to 75 already after Bitcoin fell down from 69K to 59K. Now we're back up to 67. And basically both the funding rates and the Fear and Greed Index reset at the same time. So this is super bullish. We talked about meme coins. Me and Da Vinci's portfolio that we mentioned on our top altcoins, they have been doing very well. For example, Shiba Inu 215%, which is mind-blowing. Hive Mapper 9.5%, and Medieval Empires 25%. Amazing. If we look at some on-chain data very quickly, we can see that Bitcoin is in the bull market territory, but we've not seen a overheated bull like we saw in the previous 2021 bull market top, again suggesting that we have still time to be going towards the upside. And I just got announced as a premium KOL for VLaunch, and that is incredible. Thank you guys so much. A massive, massive shout out. They're going to be launching projects on VLaunch very soon, and I'll be talking about this in more detail on my video tomorrow. I'll be talking about how you can potentially stake to earn IDO allocations, etc., as the altcoin season approaches, but stay tuned for this. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been like a 40-minute video. I hope you enjoyed it. There was a lot of information there. I don't know if you enjoy these types of videos. Like, the thing is, there's just so much happening in the market right now. It's sometimes better to analyze the overall trend and what's going on, compile it into one video and talk about it all together, rather than splitting up into multiple videos. But that's just my personal opinion. Please do let me know if you disagree in the comment section down below. But have a beautiful day, everyone, and I will see you all very soon. Take care, guys, and bye-bye.